Handling legal matters is stressful. So, let the law offices of Frank Bruno Jr. provide you with the insightful counsel you deserve. The law offices of Frank Bruno Jr. has successfully handled thousands of cases for 25 plus years. They focus on elder law and estate planning, but are equipped to navigate you through all stages of family law and divorce to real estate law and probate. The law offices of Frank Bruno. Call 718-418-5000 or visit them at frankbrunolaw.com. That's frankbrunolaw.com. Frank Bruno. He's your numero uno.
You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC.
Professor Dershowitz is on the phone. Let's go straight to Professor Dershowitz.
Yeah, and joining us now is Professor Alan Dershowitz, of course, Harvard Law School Professor Emeritus. Professor Dershowitz, first of all, I guess your reaction to all of this, and then we're going to get to a whole bunch of big Supreme Court cases with you.
Well, I'm very frightened now that if Biden is taken off the ticket, which could happen, that the Democrats will replace him with a radical, progressive, anarchist, anti-American, anti-Israel extremist. Because if moderate Biden is not on the ticket, the progressives are going to see this as an opportunity to take over the Democratic Party.
Well, I think it's Gary Newman.
Yeah, Gavin Newsom. You're talking about Gavin. Yeah. I mean, there's talk of that.
But there'll be a lot of effort to try to push to the left, and that's the way they're going to try to get the nomination. They're not going to look at people like Josh Shapiro, for example, who's a moderate governor of Pennsylvania. They're going to look to the left, and they're going to be pushed to the left because the Democratic Party is beholden today to the squad and to the left and to people who don't care about America's future, who care much more about trying to destroy America. And I'm afraid for the country. And so my hope is that Biden stays in, wins, loses, whatever, but he's at least a moderate. At least, you know, I know many of your viewers disagree with this, but he's a decent man. He is not somebody who would deliberately hurt the country, and I'm afraid.
Is he aware, Professor? Is he aware of his surroundings?
I think so. I think people tell me, people who know him well, that in one-on-one discussions he's pretty good. And in fact, today, you know, with a teleprompter, of course, he made a pretty strong speech. But yesterday was not very good. And you know, for me, I don't judge a candidate based only on their debate performance. I judge them based on policies, and I have mixed feelings about Biden. I have negative feelings about many other Democrats, but in the end, I think it's going to be up to Obama. I think if Obama calls him and says, "Joe, it's time to leave," he's going to leave. And if he has the support of Obama and a few other people, Schumer and others, he'll stay on and maybe lose, maybe win.
We'll wait and see. Supreme Court rulings came out today, 3 of them, and I understand on Monday they expect a decision on Trump. Let's discuss the 3 that came out today.
Yeah. Well, the most important one for Trump is the one about the January 6th riots. And it's not so much of what it said about that case. It's that what the Supreme Court 6-3 said is you can't just stretch criminal statutes beyond what they were intended to do. And for me, this is a big plus for his New York appeal, because the Supreme Court said, essentially, you can't do what the New York judge did in that case. Take a bunch of statutes, put them together that weren't intended to do. That's what happened in the case in front of the Supreme Court. They took a statute that was an Enron statute about bookkeeping, and they applied it to demonstrators. And the Supreme Court said no. So I think it's a pretty much slam dunk that the Supreme Court would overrule the New York conviction, the one that Biden spent so much time talking about and continues to spend so much time in ads talking about a convicted felon. Trump is not a convicted felon because the crime that he was convicted of is non-existent.
How about his poor CFO that had a company car and took the car home? I mean, and they put the poor man, the 73-year-old, 75-year-old, they put the poor man in jail twice.
They are using the criminal justice system to even scores, to make political points, and I think the Supreme Court put the brake on that today. I hope so. 6-3.
Yeah, but how does he get the time? How does he get this time that he served in jail back?
He sues.
You can't. That's the problem. Even so, you sue, you get some money, but you only have limited amount of life, and if government improperly takes years away from you, there's no way of getting it back. The other important decision today was, of course, the administrative state, the Chevron doctrine. The decision says, look, we have three branches of government, not four. And the administration, the administrators, these alphabet agencies are not a separate branch of government. And they have to be part of either the legislative branch or the executive branch. I think that, too, is a good decision for America. So, although there's a lot of grousing from liberals about who's on the Supreme Court, so far the Supreme Court has done pretty well.
There was also one other one on homeless, they can be on the streets or not. That was an interesting one. Do you know about that one, Professor?
Just a little bit, but I think it's part and parcel of the attempt to kind of create new limits on how criminal statutes, administrative statutes, I think it's an attempt. All these opinions together form a picture, and that is the law is out of control. And we're the adults in the room, and we have to bring it back to control, and we have to make sure that prosecutors don't abuse the law. That, I think, is the message of all of these cases, and it's a good message.
Now, I just want everybody to understand the January 6th verdict in plain language. Of the million people listening to us, maybe a few are lawyers, but there's a lot of regular people. What does the January 6th language actually mean?
It means that you can't take a statute that was intended to prevent the destruction of papers during an investigation of Enron and magically apply that as if it's an accordion, stretch it to cover demonstrators. And you just can't do that. That's abusing your prosecutorial authority.
And some of these people have spent 3 years in jail, 2 years in jail.
And some of them, are still in jail without a trial. Some have pleaded guilty. And I represent one of them. And we're obviously considering seriously what efforts to take to try to use this opinion to our advantage. And I think Donald Trump will be able to use this opinion to his advantage, both in the New York case and in the D.C. case.
Judge Weinberg.
Alan, it's good to talk to you again. I thought the very interesting case was the Oregon case that you alluded to, which is the right of the homeless to set up these tent cities and sleep in the streets, an attempt by the city to get control over that so they have control of the quality of life in the cities. And I think that was a good decision because otherwise you're going to have total anarchy in the streets and public health disasters.
And it also applies to what happened at Columbia University. I mean, these decisions, although they apply specifically to one case, often have implications for other important cases. And so, it takes time for lower courts to interpret these opinions, but I think what we're going to see is some changes in the way in which demonstrations and protests are permitted or not permitted, and encampments and all of that. But, it's too early to know exactly how these decisions will affect life. And then, of course, we're waiting for the big one on Monday. And on Monday, we'll hear whether or not there is limited immunity, and we'll hear whether or not there's an ability to bring Trump to trial. I have to run now, but
thank you.
I'm in Alaska.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
Afternoon. Good.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Dershowitz.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.